When we need to prepare for a competitive event, our go-to company is the Army Painter.
Thanks to their complete range of paints, spray cans, and gaming tools, we're able to complete our new armies and units in no time.
When we need to elevate the quality of our models and terrain, the Army Painter is always our first choice.
You may not know this, but the Army Painter has sponsored more competitive events than any other hobby company.
Tournament and wargaming is in their DNA.
Visit thearmypainter.com to learn more about their amazing products.
And use promo code AW Paints for a 5% discount from your Army Painter purchases.
What are you waiting for? Discover the best way to prepare your models for events with the Army Painter today.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Art of War. If you missed us, we're back. We forgot one of the parts of the update here, which was to the US Open layouts. And I'm going to frankly blame Games Workshop because they didn't make the changes to the ruins in red. And
that would be cool.
That's consistency, okay? I don't know why they didn't do it here, but we are going to go through the US Open layouts, which did receive a significant change. And you might say, hey, this doesn't seem like a ton. Well, it actually is. So let's go over here and go ahead and go through the layouts. So you might look, well, what exactly changed with what's going on here? Well, they changed the giant U-shapes, which previously blocked effectively that entire base size.
Yeah.
And made it so that on this board in particular, if you were a monster vehicle, you were not walking through the corner right there.
You're a monster vehicle and you wanted to deploy roughly in your deployment zone. You could not go this direction. You just couldn't exit. These two ruins were too close together because they were previously drawn right like this up against the wall, and you just couldn't leave your deployment zone. That sucked. Oftentimes in teams, especially, you would put someone on this deployment zone because it would either be this deployment or it would be quarters if you were really rude, and they would just be stuck with most of their deployment zone completely unusable if they were a vehicle-based army, like if they were Leman Russes, because they just couldn't exit through here, so they either had to take the long way around, which sucked very badly, or they had to take the other long way around, split their army up. They can't exit their deployment zone properly. It was a travesty.
And it literally happened this past weekend. What was it, round one you played against?
Round one, I played against... I played against Admech.
Admech with a bunch of onagers and dune crawlers and chickens.
Yep.
And you were like, okay.
I picked the table because it was a team event. And we played on this layout here. And I want you to just see something. Which is that, okay, let's talk about parts of the deployment that are unusable. Couldn't deploy anything here. I would also shoot him if he did. Deploying stuff here is very use impaired. And deploying stuff behind this wall, so where can he deploy his, 8 vehicles? Well, he can deploy them here. Okay, that's one vehicle. And he can deploy it here if he's okay with being shot. He was not. And he can deploy them in here if he's okay with not leaving his deployment zone. And so what happened was he was just filtering out and around the edges, doing not much, filtering out and through here, doing not much, and trying to come down here while he was getting shot the whole way. It was miserable. And that is fundamentally from the ground up changed because you can now leave your deployment zone through those ruins. It's great. And that was even on Tipping Point, which is not the worst map to be screwed on.
Yeah, Search and Destroy is way worse.
Search and Destroy, the worst one is Crucible of Battle. There is nowhere to deploy functionally that is not behind a wall. And it's awful. So that is a huge change. It's also a very good one. It doesn't really matter for a lot of the terrain layouts here. This is fairly sizable. The amount of models that you can hide here is changed quite a bit. And the amount of real estate you get to control from behind a wall has shrunk, which is actually a fairly big
honestly,
change.
Look at it. If we look at the edge of this used to be fully blocked here, such that you could only draw a narrow angle through here if they were on terrain, or if they were hiding behind this. If they're on terrain with 3 different units and one sticking out here, now you can just see it from across this.
Yeah. So if you look at the lines of sight that are possible. That's where the line of sight is looking now if you're in the terrain feature. So only really, before, if in red, it was like that, which is fundamentally different with how many units you can hide in the terrain feature. This is actually a huge change. and it means that it is a lot harder to stage your entire army in midboard, which is probably a good change.
Like multiple rhinos easily fit in there before, and now that's actually tricky.
Yes. So that's a big deal for that. Not like fundamentally game defining, but like it is a big deal. It makes 1-inching the walls harder because it's not this gigantic wall you can protect. It is, you can get around it easier. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of roughly the same. This one doesn't really matter that much.
It's your home objective, whatever.
And then other Dawn of War board, same thing. It doesn't matter as much specifically here, but where it does matter a lot is when we get down to this board.
Yeah.
Which was, in my opinion, one of the worst boards, period.
So there's a problem, and the problem takes the board from cool to very annoying to work with. So what you can do with a wall is you can put your models 1 inch from the inside, and GW has explicitly made this part of the rules. Their FAQ came out like last iteration and said, no, this is how the rules work. So if you put them 1 inch from the wall, from the outside of the wall, just over, your opponent cannot engage you from the outside of the wall and cannot physically put their base on the inside and thus cannot charge you. It's just how the rules work. It's an interaction with how the charge rules work. They just cannot charge you if you 1 inch the walls. It's a thing basically most competitive players know about. Pretty much everybody, actually. I've not had to explain what I mean when I say 1-inching the walls, and my opponent hasn't had to explain that either. And it is officially part of the game because they officially, in their FAQ, said, no, that is how it works. All right. So,
however, it used to be way easier.
It used to be way easier. So back before, when this was where the terrain was sitting instead, and it's relevant that it happens on both sides, you could 1-inch the walls, and then you have, like, you put units 1 inch in, you can't go around the board edge, so you're not getting that. So you have to filter through the center if you want to do anything, and it's very easy to put units like a stop here of like a unit you don't care about, or a unit here that you don't really care about, and then your opponent can't charge through the wall. And if they go around, they're going to get, hit by a unit. They're going to run into a stop here that they don't really care about. And it's very tough to engage on this board. It slows the game down to a crawl. But the way it works here now is if they do 1 inch this wall like this, well, guess what? You can just charge around the wall and in, because this is no longer physically blocking the whole thing. You can it's so much easier to charge into that ruin and around it. And it's not the easiest thing in the world, right? To charge a unit on the other side of the wall, you probably have to place like a base here or something like that. But at least it gives you the ability to do so. Whereas before,
it's also a lot harder to block.
It's a lot harder to block. Whereas before it was just this would be blocked and this would be blocked. And so if you were a melee, if you were trying to charge, you could operate in that space right there. And if you were a shooting army, the shooting armies are still shut down. They do not like this. But a shooting army would operate in this space, which is very tiny. And every interaction with the board would have to be through that aperture. And that is no longer the case. Now it is much harder to block out the wall because you can just charge physically around. This is actually a huge change to this map and how it plays at top level. So I think it still does the same thing in teams where if I'm playing Blood Angels, I'm picking this map, right? If I'm playing World Eaters, I'm picking this map. But it doesn't just have, like, if you want to watch a game where it gets decided by not decided by the map, but the tenor of the game, the pace of the game is decided by the map, our Space Wolves versus AdMech games slowed to a crawl.
As we both blocked either side of the ruin and just kind of did the bare minimum.
Yeah, so what happens is, like, I would block this side of the ruin, and then you would block this side of the ruin, and I blocked this side of the ruin, and you blocked this side of the ruin. And then every single unit, friendly and enemy, has to filter through an aperture about yay big. And that was terrible. Like, I put Bjorn right here, so if you charge me, you're running into the toughest thing. You put like a Dune Rider here. So charging around was miserable.
Yeah.
So basically you filtered through a tiny little window and we couldn't really interact with each other at all.
It's not the most fun map because the interaction is so limited, but this opens it up a bit more.
Yes.
It still definitely favors those combat armies over the shooting ones, but now there's a little bit more play in doing things. It's not so easy to restrict.
Yeah, and you can still pull plays if you are a sneaky Pete, where you like put your unit that you want to keep alive right here, 1-inching the wall, and then you take a unit you don't care about, like scouts or something, and you put it behind. And they can't access the real unit, and that will still be pretty good for you. And if they charge nonsense in, you can heroic and at least get a trade. But now there's some play, right? You can charge through the wall. You can get things going, and that is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, and less units are fitting in that as well.
Yes.
Overall.
Absolutely. So I think that's a great change. Same thing for layout 8, although layout 8 is less stalematey than layout 7 for sure, just given the way the rest of the ruins are laid out. It is, it's easier to fit through the center. But even so, now you don't just block out, half of the available board space, actually more than half, because they're 12 inches. So 24 inches of the board is 44 inches. You have 20 inches to play. You have a little bit more around each side, and that does free up the board quite a bit.
Yeah, so overall, I think this is a much more positive change. It does make it annoying because we have full U-shapes, so now I have to get some additional terrain pieces to match this, but we will do that, and we'll be getting those updated games on as soon as we finish that.
Yep, I already looked at the away games terrain set. It is modular, and it can be built to accommodate this.
Yep,
so
and I believe we can
no
just
issues.
pull half of the U off and then put the back side on, the other left side on.
If we take the big panels off and we replace them with small panels, we should get about this size, which is what we're looking for. If you want an insight into how, this is a good show into how, little minute changes on terrain can actually make big impacts in top level play. I think this is a really good case study in that.
Absolutely. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. We just wanted to give that update because it wasn't obvious that things changed until you really look at it. So thanks to Games Workshop for sending this update out today, and we will definitely be playing on these updated layouts as soon as possible. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we will send you off once again. Do give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow. And hope you have an awesome time playing some Pariah Nexus games.
All right. Send you out with a word from our sponsors, Rattlecan Studios. Very excited to have them on board.
So long for now.
Bye-bye.